So before I share a little bit more on the screen, I just want to see who everybody's here. And you can see our team. We've got Kyle, Tim, and Celine from yesterday, and our volunteers at the back. Frida, hi. Frida joined in. Just as a reminder, yesterday we looked through a bunch of different options for explaining genetic testing to families beyond the traditional genetic testing report. And we looked at a summary letter, we looked at cartoon booklets, we looked at a plain language genetic testing report that was developed by an Australian group. And I just in the chat today added a printout, a PDF printout provided by Jamie and Hillary at Impact Genetics, showing the distribution of RV genetics in unilateral cases, as well as an infographic about mosaicism. So that's available for download, and I'm gonna just share those. But before I share, I wanted to hear people's feedback from yesterday. We heard a lot from Toronto, maybe not as much from Vancouver. So Mitch, do you want to see what's people are thinking in your, do you have the same people back or people?
I believe we do.
Yes.
Pretty much identical group. We have a very high retention, which is I'll just see what people think if anybody wants to jump in. I know yesterday we got a little bit, the conversation got a little bit away from the content of the report itself. We got talking about the timing and some other things. I don't know, does anybody have any thoughts about that? Anything you want to share at this point?
I'll say, so I actually really like the Australian one, like as far as
Gotta get our microphone.
So I was thinking like how you guys were talking about the timing and stuff, and that they're already getting thrown a lot of information. And so I was like looking at the Australian one, and it's really simple, and I think it's one that you could start with, just because it's like a simple design, it's visual, which helps because everybody likes visual. Then eventually, once they start processing, you could go down to the other ones that are a little bit more information. But that's my take on it, because I would think this is not overwhelming. I'm not gonna, oh my gosh, all this language compared to like the other stuff. This doesn't have all that medical jargon that a lot of people wouldn't understand, I guess. Yeah, that's my thought.
Okay, that's good. Anything else? Or even virtually online?
Maybe that's a good point, that we were reminded this morning about keeping it at a grade 3 reading level.
Mm-hmm.
That might be a challenge.
Okay, all right. Okay, grade 3 reading level. It's hard to take sort of stuff we learned at the university level to grade 3, but if we can do it, I know we can.
I think grade 5 level, because that's what the Toronto Sun is.
Grade 5 level from Celine is what you're saying.
That's what the Toronto Sun is written in.
The microphones in case you wanna, you just unmute.
Sorry,
talk.
Yeah, I think unmuted.
Yeah, this little button is if you guys wanna chat as well. Okay.
I think grade 3 is okay, but I think grade 5 level to aim for like the Toronto Sun kind of level of reading, because that's what the Toronto Sun is written at the grade 5 level.
Okay.
Grade 10 level is Toronto Star. So I think doing that kind of like just very layman terms, I think that's a great idea.
Okay, great. Anything else? Mary?
I'm trying to do this stuff before and basically put stuff to, we were always told we had to kind of do it to a grade 9 level, but it is very difficult to take some of the scientific knowledge and words that are used within that realm and bring them down to a grade 7 or a grade 9 or a grade 5 level. It's really difficult to do. But some and I don't know, because it loses that translation sometimes. And yet, you know, if you leave it at a higher level, people are really not understanding it. And it's one thing to be in a room with a person trying to explain a complicated, you know, genetic type of or scientific type of thing into easier words. But it's in the written format, it's harder to do because you don't know what the understanding of the individual is. So I don't know if we're ever really going to achieve a grade 5 level in any of this stuff. I think it's probably not realistic, and just throwing that out there.
Okay, we can try, but you're right, it's gonna be difficult. Any other comments based on yesterday's discussion before I just share my screen to?
Me, I want to share something. I think for me, the ideal report could be a mix-up of both of them, like have something like a cover page with the most important information, something simple to read for everyone. And there are some of us, like me, that always say thank you when you have more information about it. So the next 2 or 3 pages could be some, deeply information or explanation, medical words, probably more difficult to read, but important anyway. So in that way, you can have like the important information in one shot, and then you can go deeply if you want, but at least you have the most important information at the beginning.
Okay, so start simple and then give the reader the ability to delve into more complex information page by page. That might get at our solution, Mary. Instead of, you know, not everything can be totally simple, we sort of bring the reader, the patient along with us. That's good feedback. Oh, Jamie, yes, thank you.
Thanks. I think I agree with Mary in terms of language is difficult, but I think as I've been trying to do a lot of these for some patient groups, I just think as long as you are consistent with the word you're using. So for example, changing retinoblastoma to RB when you're also describing the RB1 gene, it can be very confusing. So I think if we stick to language that we decide on, that if it's consistent, I think that can offer a little bit more clarity with some of the more complex. Like if we're using the word mutation, we use the word mutation all the time. If we use variant, we use it all the time. It's just, I think that's been helpful.
That makes sense. Okay. Any other comments? Mary, you're back? So then old hand or no?
Yeah, so when I got off yesterday from the workshops, I was thinking, you know, there has to be like pictorial explanations of results are I think very good, right? But when we just going back to, you know, my career as a genetic counselor, when you're trying to explain things to people that are very complicated, when they're also very emotional, is very difficult. But you all have a time frame to do it in, and usually it's an hour, which is not adequate enough. And so in some genetics clinics across the country, for different things, what they've done is come up with like you know, a video as a general educational principle. So like if we could do, you know, a general educational video about the principles behind, let's say, retinoblastoma genetics, which families could view before coming into a genetics appointment, including like what they might need for future surveillance if they were unilateral or if they were bilateral, or, you know, all of those things that are generally said to everybody who has, you know, retinoblastoma. And in that you could have, you know, your general information, which you included yesterday, which was great how you did it with the cells and chromosomes and DNA and an mutation, whether you're bilateral, whether you're unilateral, whether it's heritable or non, heritable, that's the same for everybody. If it's hereditary, what your clinical follow-up might look like, what the need for family genetic follow-up would look like, future prenatal testing, secondary cancer risks, they're going to stay the same. And for the non-hereditary, your clinical follow-up and your family info, that's the same for everybody. So if everybody saw that video beforehand, and then you got into a session with people, you could actually get to the real guts of the matter for that individual person, right? So if that was available somehow through CRAB and given to clinics across the country, everybody would start from the same base. And I think you wouldn't get people saying 15 years later, I didn't understand what they said. Or, well, you might still get it, but hopefully you wouldn't. So I don't know, maybe that's just a thing to put out there, that something like that works more effectively. And I know we've used it for years in genetics, like with prenatal stuff. People are now doing group stuff for, general cancer genetics. So I think that's a way. And if it was standard and it came from CRAB, then maybe it could be used as a Canadian all-inclusive thing. Anyway, that's
That's certainly a creative thing. So we have I don't know if you guys can see it online, but maybe Mitch, if you guys have also like a paper. I'm hearing two things. I heard new simple plain language like Australian is good. Then we heard maybe that plus a little bit more information. And now from Mary, I'm hearing a video that's sort of like a primer that helps us get on the same page with the genetics of retinoblastoma it's sort of a way to get to the meat of the individualized report, right? So slightly two different things. We can do both or all. What do people think about the idea of the video as a standard thing people get to learn the basics of retinoblastoma genetics? It's different than the report, which tells you your exact family's outcome.
I guess as a parent, I would say that anything that people can be educated on ahead of time, because it's such a difficult time to take in information, and if they could even share it with family and friends, if it was like a video that was emailed to them, and then they could come into the appointment sort of knowing what to expect at the appointment as well, because most people haven't been to a genetics counseling appointment before. I think that would help people then be ready for the appointment and ready with their questions and what they were expecting to get out of it. The video is a great idea.
Great. Celine?
Actually, I love that idea too, because just speaking from experience, Logan just had a tonsillectomy, and the hospital had a video of a girl going into the hospital, checking in, like from basically beginning to end, like pre-registration, pre-op, surgery, post-op, and what to expect with recovery and everything. And I found that to be extremely helpful, and it was done I think through the child life department.
Okay.
So it was done, so it was child friendly as well. So we were encouraged to watch that with Logan to prepare him for the surgery. And that was extremely helpful because it answered questions as well, and it made us less anxious as well as parents with what to expect. So I think the video realm can go in any, you can do this not just with genetics, but with with everything. I think that's a great idea. And it was like, also just so you know, like in terms of production, it was done like with basic things, like probably a phone camera.
Right.
And it wasn't like anything like professional, I would say, like nothing, like something that, we can take on essentially. Yeah.
Okay, any other comments on the video? Because we're gonna move into brainstorming in a sec. Yeah.
I would just add that, was that for me or someone else? Okay, just to say, we don't have to necessarily reinvent the wheel here. I know that, as Talene was saying, here at BC Women's, we have videos for amniocentesis and CVS for those procedures for pregnant people. And the hereditary cancer program in Vancouver has excellent videos on different things that I'm sure we could use those as resources for retinoblastoma. Or not directly, because they don't necessarily deal with RB, but to say that we could model off of their lead.
Fantastic. Okay, how does it sound if we break off into little group? Oh, Jamie.
Just one question and curious. In terms of the genetics of retinoblastoma and having a video, do you think it might warrant having a video for bilateral patients and then a video for unilateral patients? Because the unilateral group is the complicated one. That's the one that there's always this residual leftover risk even after genetic testing, and then we have to talk about potential mosaicism. Whereas the bilateral group, it's pretty it's a much simpler diagnosis. We know it's germline and it could be sort of tailored for each type. Just maybe consider.
That's a good point, Jamie. And maybe before we go to brainstorming, do you want to walk us through? I can share my screen. You shared this really lovely. That's the wrong one. Here.
Oh yeah, but
So this side of the.
sure.
Oh, I don't know why. Showing the presenter view. I don't know what they did here.
Used to have just the PDF of the RB distribution one. That
guys,
we did this because the unilateral population, I get countless emails and requests from genetic counselors all over the world just because the unilaterals are so tricky and we don't really know how many are actually germline. So Hillary took the time to just like look at our data. And so we're really trying to show here. So it's focused on uni because we know bilateral, trilaterals, they're germline, whether you find the variant or not in blood, but it's this unilateral population that we know about 19% of them have an RB1 variant in their blood. So they're germline. I like that you termed it lucky bilaterals, Helen. And basically of the ones that are heritable, just under half of them are mosaic. So meaning the RB1 variant is only present in some of the cells of their body, which tells you they started with 2 working copies. So when we know a patient's mosaic, siblings and parents are not at risk for RB. The ones that we do find in the blood, they're just like a sporadic patient, but a bilateral patient, excuse me. So this is how we tried to pull out the very complicated nature of retinoblastoma into some numbers. So that's going to be in our white paper, which is going to be coming out hopefully shortly. And I've done the same thing, Helen, with a couple of complicated parts, like people that want to know, well, what is the level of mosaics? They're actually really low level, like under 10%.
Right.
So I'm creating like a QR code to a link for more information if you want it, kind of thing.
So now
Celine has a question.
So this is why I think a video or a pamphlet would be so great, because now I'm going to ask this question about the sporadic piece, the 81% sporadic. Is it like 10? You said 10% like of sporadic cases end up being mosaic? Is that what
No, the sporadic means there's no RB1 variant in the blood. It's only occurred in the cells of the eye. So it's not in any other cells of the body.
The part where I'm so confused, because then we were told, so 99.99999% non-heritable, but that little percentage chance of mosaicism.
In his germ cells for the next generation.
Yes.
I think you always counsel that. Is that right, Jamie?
Yeah, that you'll never ever get away from that small risk for anybody that
Test that.
And that's something that we can also make a pamphlet for, right? And then say, as like a reminder that, you have to be on this, because to for early detection, early diagnosis in case.
Right.
Yeah.
Good point.
I like the idea of having the 2 options, the unilateral versus bilateral. And would we be able to do like a like a sub kind of version of as well for the unilateral, so that there's also that sporadic but mosaicism, like that, just kind of like that reminder there, so that people don't stop there, you know, like give
Yeah.
up, like, okay, my kid is unilateral, but that's it, not really, like, you don't know.
Yeah, in
Yeah.
future, yeah, exactly. Okay. So how does it sound if we separate out into our groups, so Vancouver, Toronto, and virtual people together, and we start brainstorming what we'd want to see in these videos and what format do we want it, what do we want it to look like, how detailed is the information, what is the intended outcome of such a video? Is it so that it's just enough to be able to understand the genetic test report? Does it go hand in hand with a plain language genetic testing report or some other tool that we discussed? And just to remind you of what those, sorry, for the virtual group, I made a Miro board. You can use it if you like or not. So Miro is an online tool. The board will look something like this, and I had made this ahead of time just to sort of outline the possible outcomes, but of course you guys came up with a really cool new option, which is video. So maybe just use it to document, if you'd like, your ideas or talk amongst yourselves. Same thing, we'll mute so that we're not bothering, the Toronto discussions don't bother the Vancouver or online. But if you need something, send me a chat or a text. Maybe we'll take 20 minutes to think about what this video looks like, what we think about having a separate one for uni or bilateral, and then come back together and share what we're thinking. And I think Vancouver, you guys have some markers and paper to write on?
Yes, we do.
Okay, great. Any questions or other thoughts? Okay, 20 minutes, let's go. Also, stop share so the online people can see each other.
Do we just begin chatting like here? Or
I have no idea if they can hear us or if we're okay like this, I guess.
I think they've muted us. And they don't seem to be hearing us, so
Okay.
maybe we just chat.
Yeah, I logged into Miro, but this is, as Helen described, it's more centered around us working on like a paper version of a patient support document. But I think everyone's resonating with you, Mary, on more of a video tool. So maybe should we, you know, I can take some notes. Should we track some ideas that could be put into a video and then share them back with Helen when they log back in with us?
Yeah,
That
that'd be
makes
great.
sense?
Does everybody want to unmute? So I think there's 6 of us here, maybe.
Yeah.
7?
I
Linda?
see Jen. Hi, Jen.
Hi.
Hi. Is Ingrid still with us? Who else is in here?
I'm only seeing the 5 of us plus, wait now. Oh, now I'm after losing all you guys. What am I after doing? Okay, it looks like Linda's in our group, but she hasn't unmuted, so.
Okay.
I mean, I just thought of a video because and they'd come with some basic information so that everything is not new. Because I think the thing is when you come in and everything is new to you, it gets really difficult. And you know, half of what's said, I'm sure people don't understand, right? So if the basics were there and you could somehow, I don't know how it would be done. I mean, that's the other part. How would people access that? And could they play it over, you know, for like their maybe family and stuff like that, so that you wouldn't have to have parents try and explain it from their point of view, but explain it because it's there for people to see. I don't know, but yeah.
I think it only helps. We've experienced this with our, well, we don't have a video, Mary, but we offer genetic counseling for one of our prognostic tests for uveal melanoma. So these patients are just so traumatized. They get their eyes out, they get genetic testing, they don't even remember. So our goal was to give them the chance to like prepare them for what the results are, walk them through it, so then they think about it, marinate with it, then they go back to their doctor and they can get those, the few things that didn't make sense, they can fill them in because it's not so much all at once. It makes a big difference. I think we've seen it all the time, the more information, and they may watch it a couple times, right, Mary? Like they may just get overwhelmed even during their first view.
And you know, people typically are receiving all this genetic information when they've just been diagnosed or not long, you know, from the diagnosis. So they're still very upset. And the more upset you are, the less you hear, you know, and the less you actually absorb, I think. So, you know, being in genetics for many years, the worst part of it is knowing that half the time people are only leaving with half of what you said, but you don't know what half they actually got and what half they didn't. And so, you know, you wish you could see them another 10 times, but you know, the reality of medicine today is that that time is not available. And so, you know, you feel like you did a crappy job, you know, and so I often took way more time than I was supposed to, but then I'd get wrapped over the knuckles by, you know, my manager saying, listen, you can't be in there for an hour and a half or 2 hours with patients. But if somebody is crying, you can't just say, well, listen now, you know, pull up your socks. I got more to tell you. It doesn't work, you know? So I don't know. Having that information that's common to everybody beforehand, I think is really the key. You know, how we do that and what goes in it. That's the question.
Yeah, I'm wondering, Mary, you're raising a point of like how do the patients get it at the right time? The families get it at the right time. So yeah, it's still putting in the hands of the healthcare professional to hand them something or to allow them to scan a QR code, getting that to them at the right time at the diagnosis point. Will be critical, like figuring out the mechanism. How do we get this to the healthcare providers who see the patient family very first moments?
I'm one of the nurses in the eye clinic. So when we do have a patient that's diagnosed, we do have one for sure is like an RB contact list. So it has all the doctors' names and roles on there. And that's definitely a possibility for us to be able to add that to our booklet or like sheet of paper to be able to give them a QR code where they can access this. So that's definitely doable. And then they can go home and access it when they are available, when they are in the better pace, frame of mind, that they can kind of be able to understand that information when they're ready.
Jen, do you think there's any patients that might like to be able to watch it while they're in hospital waiting, like, or any like just chomping? Like, I'm just thinking, like, would an iPad with the option, or like an iPad that this is a video, or if you're not ready to watch the video, put your email in and the link will be sent, or something, like, just so that.
Yeah, I think they can put an email where they'll get it sent to their email, which I think would be better in terms of them watching it there. Like, you mean watching it while they're waiting to speak to us?
Yeah, like, I mean, I just know there's a lot of downtime with
There is.
all the investigations, and I know in the prenatal world, some patients wanted nothing to do with it, but some wanted to know it all right. I need to know this right now, and I'll marinate it on, and then I'll maybe revisit it.
I feel like when the patients are seen, so when we call them into our clinic, they've already seen either a physician or an optometrist or ophthalmologist. So they already know that there's something wrong.
Okay.
And when they come in, they're pretty anxious because they're seen by us to get dilated. Then they do images, and then they wait for the doctors to look at the images. So that would be their downtime. And I feel like their anxiety is like super high,
Right.
where whatever they're reading or watching, they're not going to be kind of taking it all in. I think they're too anxious, and they're just waiting for that diagnosis for us to talk to them.
Right.
But I think, giving them something that they can take home with them so that they know that they can access it at a later time would be better.
Okay. I mean, there's nothing like this out there. So, I mean, Hillary, like, I think even if the physician isn't giving them a piece of paper or a QR code, like, if you Google for a video on the, like, explaining the genetics of retinoblastoma, it doesn't exist. I've done it many times because I did one for NSGC and it was the only one out there, Mary. Like, there's nothing else dedicated to it. So they'll find it if they're savvy enough to Google, and we just label it, right?
Well, the other thing, I mean, in terms of people who are giving them back their genetic results, usually that's going to be a genetic counselor either within the clinic that they're being seen in or back in their home province or whatever. But at least if they knew about that resource as well, they could say, listen, before you come in for your genetic results and your counseling session, it would be really valuable for you to watch this video. Now, it might have been the second time or the third time that they've been told that, and it might have been the third time they've seen it. But as you know, the more times you see something that's complicated, the more you get from it. And so, by the time they actually get to the people who are really going to give them the information that needs to sit with them for the rest of their lives, they will have heard the story a couple of times, the general story. Then they can get to their specifics, right? So I mean, I don't know. Who's on from that's got Helen Demiroslav on it? Who are you guys?
Hey, I'm Adam.
Okay.
Carter, yeah. We just started to join in here, we're trying to take some notes on the side here.
Okay. All right. So yeah, I mean, I don't know if anybody has any, I mean, I wrote down just, when I got off the line yesterday about what I thought should go in something like that. But, that's from the point of view of me being on the genetic side of it, where I probably know more. And I don't know if anybody has any more information that they think should go in, or if you thought what I said would be profitable, or I probably said it too fast and you didn't get it. But I don't know if people want to talk about what they think should go in to either a video or a pamphlet or something that was going to explain it in some way.
Yeah, I have a quick suggestion, or like maybe idea. Do you think having like a short story about like a patient's journey, so like someone anecdotally tells their experience and says, this is what I went through, this is how it affected me, and just, it's a quick 1-2 minute summary that hits like the emotional impact of someone's journey, and then you have maybe a few people would say that in the video, And maybe that's different than just a straightforward educational video on, this is RB, this is this is that. And it's more centered on the emotion that someone may face in that emotional time, right? So it's something that someone can relate to. So it's maybe someone looking back on how they felt, being diagnosed, for example, and like it's maybe forward thinking for a patient coming in. So
yeah, and it goes to the morning sessions, right, of engagement, and maybe we can find that teenager or young adolescent who might want to be showcased, maybe who has also the skills, the video production skills too, that they want to showcase. It might highlight some different skills and opportunity to share.
But it also shows, I mean, for most people, whether it's parent or even young teen, they probably didn't get the full story. You know what I mean? Like they probably still have things they didn't understand. And it would be great to say, okay, here was my journey and here's what I didn't understand. And so what's going to follow in this video is a simple explanation of what I would have liked to have heard that wasn't available then, and it's going to be really valuable for you. That's a good way of coming in there as well, and it's more personable, and yeah, I like your ideas.
Yeah, I like the idea of the emotional trigger there, but I was also thinking, as Mary's talking about their journey, that keeps coming up, and we've got the maps, the RB journey map. If somebody spoke to that and then spoke to, but then I was 5 and I didn't have to have any treatments anymore, and so that seemed to be the end of my journey, but it wasn't. And you could even break the video down into little, like, short clips about, so this is where I am today. We're waiting for these images to come back. And then what's next? But they could choose which one they were ready to look at. But I do agree also that it would have to be available through YouTube or somehow that they could access it by Googling, rather than depending on finding that piece of paper with a QR code on it.
The other thing is how do you get that out there, and how do you get it paid for? But if it's a YouTube thing, I don't know if you get paid for however many hits you get or whatever. But I mean, if Crab were to create it and put it on a YouTube channel, and I don't know, you young people might know about this, but I mean, would it generate revenue even for Crab to pay for itself in the end?
In terms of generating revenue, unlikely that it probably would generate significant revenue starting off. Maybe down the line, if it develops into something bigger, then maybe. I wouldn't count on that as the main principle. I would think it as more just like a tool for sharing. Maybe you could repurpose those videos to short form content on other platforms and not just on YouTube, which is commonly done. Like, for example, you could take a long form video and you can plug it into AI softwares, and the AI software will automatically target the person's face and plug it into a short form clip that you can post on Instagram to share that. And it gives the highlights of the video, for example. So that those tools are available, right? But the knowledge dissemination to be able to do that, maybe that's a bit, it's not being done currently, or to the degree for this particular disease, maybe, but something to think about.
And I mean, there's stuff already out there, as they mentioned in Alberta, in Vancouver, where BC Cancer Agency probably does have some good educational videos about, hereditary cancer in general, that so you wouldn't have to totally reinvent the wheel. You know what I mean? Like, there's information out there that you could use from other sources and then put it into one great teaching video, with experience as well.
Or even just editing those videos to make it shorter. for someone to understand. So if it's a 20-minute video that's more comprehensive, could you just make it into a 1-minute video, 2-minute video to just highlight some of the main points? Or even combine like maybe a bit of a testimonial and then have, finish that by saying, here's a quick 1-minute summary of kind of what this is. But at least it engages the person with that emotional appeal to start off, I would think.
I liked on yesterday, Helen showed an image map of kind of the life cycle and journey of retinoblastoma patient. It would be cool to use that as the if depending on what platform we're using, the patient could, at whatever journey they're at, if they are now in their 20s and 30s and they would like to have a child, they would click on the planning video. And now they don't need to worry about their treatment anymore. That's not their primary focus or their family's focus. They want to zero their attention on prenatal diagnosis. They want to decide if they're going to use IVF to avoid, or they're going to, have monitor their pregnancy and have the early delivery because that's their choice. And they could zero in on that section. So it'd be interesting to use that life cycle to zero in on what video topics are most needed.
I love that idea that you can really, because I think a lot of parents would love to see it from the perspective of when they are growing up and wanting to start a family and reminding themselves of what was done at the very beginning and how that's going to help them make choices. And I think, like, I don't know, with Mary, your experience too, that like the emotional component or what's triggering to you is different at each stage. And
Hi team, can you guys hear us?
Yeah.
Yep.
Are we ready to come back and hear what every group sort of discussed? Can you all hear me? Maybe? Sorry to interrupt.
No, we were deep in the heart of ideas.
Yeah, great. Okay, and I see Mitch.
Sorry, we had you.
Now we hear you guys. Okay. All right, all our audio's back. I hear Vancouver, I think online people. So maybe I'll give the group on virtual a chance first to tell us what you came up with for what a video might look like for explaining genetics.
Yeah, we had some good conversations, Helen. And I think, we came up with some, we probably could talk for another hour generating some more ideas. Some of our conversations centered around, how are we going to get that video to the patient, to the family in a timely manner. We were talking about, Jen commented on some of the documentation she's providing in the clinic, how we could nestle a QR code document into the kind of stack of information that the families receive. But also, because that stack of paper can get lost in the shuffle, that we do need to get it on YouTube or some platform that has a really searchable title. Jamie's described that she's tried to search for content before, and there's hardly any genetics of RB content out there. So we use a really good searchable title, get it onto YouTube, would be really, really useful. Another topic we centered, we were just getting into the weeds on how many videos, what types of videos. We thought an interesting kind of centered homepage would be similar to what you showed yesterday, Helen, the life cycle of an RB patient. Yep. And you could zero in on a unilateral infant, and that might be the center of your center of your video topic. But really important would be family planning when the RB patient is ready at that point in their life. They can learn more about IVF, or maybe one of the individuals on the call talked about how you can center it around a personal story. That's how the video starts. So finding engaged individuals in CRAB who'd like to share their story, that could begin the video, and then you zero in the questions that are generated. So I think we could come up with lots of videos centered around just all the life cycle stories. You could even center back on some of the cup of tea topics that you've already recorded to answer some of the life cycle stories. Ella's presentation on second cancers would be awesome for the adult patients.
Really cool ideas. Amazing.
Did I miss, Mary, is there any other topics or anyone else on the call?
No, I think, I mean, breaking it down to sort of, general biology, general genetics, and then into, your prenatal, your secondary cancer risks, clinical follow-up. Those would be, your sections. And then for the personal component to just have somebody kind of, give their story. About like a 2-3 minute thing about what their journey was and maybe what they didn't understand and what they would have liked. And so the next part is, well, here's what I didn't understand when I went through my journey, and if I had to have had this educational piece, it would have made it a lot simpler. So here's the education piece to go with this. So yeah, that's kind of where we were, but we could have gone on for a long time.
I think we found that as well. Okay, Vancouver, do you want to share what you came up with?
Yeah, so I think we were also talking about, and at risk of kind of blowing up the scope of the project, like a video tree almost, or maybe a series of 2 or 3 videos, thinking of like, we're mostly talking about something that could go to a patient or to a family kind of at the time of diagnosis in a diagnosis package. And we were talking about who would deliver the information. Would it be animated? Would it be a doctor? Or could it be like a family presenting the information? Now we talked about what would be in there. And we decided that some of the most important things would be to just describe what is RB, describe what's coming, provide hope. And in that introductory video, really not to say too much about genetics, just to say introduce genetics. It is a genetic disease, but the depth of that could be kind of later on in like a unilateral, bilateral video. And introducing community in that diagnosis video as well, talking about CRAB, where to learn more, what else is out there. And that was about where we got. I don't know if anyone else in the room wants to have any more specific details, or if you feel I've summarized okay.
Sounds great. I think from both of the groups, we went from unilateral versus bilateral to a tree of videos. That's what it sounds like. Okay, what about our group here in Toronto? Talene, can I put you on the spot?
Okay.
In terms of microphone. Yeah.
Okay. So we were just talking about this basically like similar ideas, creating videos using AI, kind of like what was it that we called? What is it that it was called again? It's like an
AI generated
illustration, like kind of like, when you have the hands and they're drawing something and they're kind of like going through it, so there would be a voiceover as well. The other option was, and again, unilateral versus bilateral content as well. The other option was like we were thinking of having the addition of like kind of like how you would have show notes in a podcast. So having more something with just to have something tangible that someone can hold and read as well, following a video. As well as we discussed the idea of a podcast, having all that information in a podcast so people can listen to it on the go. Some people usually enjoy, like I know myself, my husband and I, we like to listen to podcasts because the kids take over the, TV and other technology around the house. So having a podcast playing kind of like in the background on the way to work would really grab our attention. And I think really focusing on it being more visual if we were to create videos and less wordy, so things that were in point form. And also making sure that the wording of the report matched the video. So having all that information from the actual the paper presented in the video, and having that like that option, the addition of the show notes. And I think a voiceover is really good too. The idea of having a voiceover so that it's not too wordy, and we do leave it at that point form kind of idea, but having somebody speak more to it with audio versus having too much wording on the screen, but more of a more visual, like drawings or clip art, that sort of thing, and really going through the whole cycle as somebody had mentioned earlier, like, from beginning to end, like how the egg is formed and fertilized and so on, and then when that happens, at what stage of development, and even taking what Jamie has created here, and really putting this on a slide. So like taking snippets of it and even animating it. So you've got fertilization, the germinal development up to the embryo, and really like just having that sort of like in a cartoon format, or even in slides, like we had said, like just like old school slides, but then you would have it kind of run through like a video presentation. I don't know if that makes sense. Yeah. Is there anything I missed? I don't know. Yeah.
Thanks, Celine. I think we all blew this. What was your terminology, Mitch? Like we blew up the project. So now we know where we want to go. It sounds like I really like that idea of the life cycle as sort of a customizable option for people kind of looking to get more information on their particular situation. I thought now in the last 10 minutes then, maybe what we could do, knowing where we want to go with a series of videos and sort of this individualizable option, where do we start? So what would be the simplest sort of RB story that we could start to map out, maybe as Talene says, as little slides that we can then take into creating one of these videos. So what would be the simplest one? Or the most urgent one? Like mosaicism came up a lot. It is kind of a tough one to tackle, but an important one. Or do we start with something like bilateral, where it's like so simple? Not really, but the simplest. What are people's thoughts? Or have I missed something and we want to start somewhere entirely different?
Or we can have groups, like one group does the one and the other does.
We could do that.
So we can just tackle both.
In the last 15 minutes, do we want to do like we have to report back in 15 minutes, right? Is that right, Sam? So it's probably not enough time for us to start sketching out these groups. We could work offline. I think I'd like to do that throughout the year and sort of map out some of these and storyboard some of these that we can then take to an animator or willing volunteer. Maybe get Lynn and her graphic design expertise to help us with some of these things. What are your thoughts on that?
I think, to be honest, I think the most uncertainty in this group of patients are the unilaterals that are negative, and they're left going, okay, is this good news or is there not? Like I think that, to be honest, is where a lot of I think it might be the best bang for a buck. It's the hardest one, but I feel like that's kind of where I think there's the greatest need from my perspective, but I'd love to know from patients.
Yeah.
Is it also the most common?
Yes, it is. It's the majority of RB patients are uni, and 80 80% of them will be negative, right? So
That
it's
was my thought, my thought of my clinician brain was going like, let's go for the horses, and the most common being the, that makes sense to me. I think my family definitely had a lot of questions, and if it's common, then double reason in my mind, but I'm open to other opinions as well.
Yeah, can I just add to that? I like I'm a parent of a unilateral
Okay.
survivor, so I have a lot of unanswered questions. So yeah, I would really benefit. Maybe my husband and I would really benefit from a video like that. The other thing that I wanted to mention was every year I come to the symposium and I never meet anybody like my son. Everybody's bilateral. It's just something that we have noticed over the years. Anybody who is unilateral, they're all adults and they're coming back to share their stories. So that really makes me wonder if their questions were answered, and if whether or not they just like kind of like, okay, we're unilateral and we don't want to have any like rehashing any old memories and come back to this. But we come back every year because we want to know more information and we want to be involved and we want to understand what led to this. So for us, we do have a lot of unanswered questions. And I think like to just kind of like speak for the unilateral community, like I think that's why they're not around. Like a lot of these younger kids are not coming to these events.
Yeah, I think you're right. Maybe just the poll of this working group. So Mitch, Talene, you represent the RB1 normal gene germline, but unilateral. Any others in that group? We've got, are the rest representing the bilateral side? I know Mary, you've got the familial scenario as well with many different phenotypes in your family.
I think the other thing with a lot of this information too, like Mitch said, there's information out there that's already been done for, like I don't know what the BC Cancer Agency has, but I know that they've done a lot of work, and so they have probably videos for different inherited cancers. And we don't to reinvent the wheel, but we could take information from that and use it in a video for RB. And from the prenatal videos that are around the country, we could take from that and use it for that section. So there's a lot of things that are out there that you could probably use to work from. I think it could be, it looks very giant now, but it could be easier than we think.
Yeah, so am I hearing then that one of the big takeaways is gathering existing resources, bringing them back to this group to evaluate what could be useful, what could maybe not, and then see where we build off, like make our decision of where we start based on what's out there first? Yeah. And I heard BC Cancer Agency is one. Impact has these great infographics I'm hoping we can borrow. I don't know who made them for you. Maybe they have animation expertise too.
It's our graphic designer. She's amazing. She's been able to work with me with all our posters, so we could certainly ask her. But also to the Canadian Association of Genetic Counselors has some pretty nice, they're using them for mainstreaming now, Mary, but they're quite nice. They were sponsored by AstraZeneca, and they have a nice summary of hereditary cancer that we can also look at. We can't alter them at all, but it's quite well done. It's pretty nicely simplified.
But you can always take information from other places and make it your own.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, you change the face, you put someone else in explaining the same thing, but then.
Yeah.
I suppose that is cheating, but
Oh, it's what it's for. LabCorp, also our parent company, has a ton of genetic counseling videos that we could also pull from too. I'd be happy to start pulling them together, and everyone can look, see what they like. But I think that the patient idea, I can't remember the gentleman, Dave's in Helen Damaris's lab there. Sorry guys, but you guys made a good suggestion of having perhaps a patient that is a unilateral, survivor, negative genetic testing, go like, okay, this is where I was, this is where my parents were, this is what they didn't understand, to make it personal would be lovely, but.
We could totally do that with our community. It's amazing. So the other thing I wanted to bring up, when we did our focus groups with families affected by retinoblastoma about their understanding of genetics, I remember there was a lot of confusion, but there were, particularly in the in one of the discussions, it was brought up that they knew their own situation, how they were affected, but they weren't quite sure of the rest of the RV world. And it sounds like we're discussing very unique, individualized, I'm gonna find out about myself and how I'm affected. Are we running the risk of maybe, and is it a problem or not, of not really knowing how others are affected? I just remember this one situation in one of our focus groups where one of the unilateral normal RB1 told another unilateral survivor, oh, you guys are fine, but the other family actually did have the germline. So there was that misunderstanding. How important is it that for you that you understand all the different ways, or is it more important to first get a handle on your own genetics?
On your own genetics is always like that. Like,
Yeah.
I don't mean to be whatever, but like, you want to know more about it in general, but like, it's always about your,
Always about you.
You want to,
yeah. Sorry, didn't mean
as
to-
it is, it's just like for me, like I wanted to know about my kids, like what is their prognosis? Like, I mean, my heart goes out to all families, but like you're always going to want to know about how is it going to affect your life personally, right?
That's good to hear, because the way we teach our labs, and probably it comes out in our communication, we're trying to teach everybody everything, and that just confuses you. So I don't know what others think.
What I suggest, like, there's really only 4 types of results that we could go into. You've got bilaterals, whether they're positive or not. We know we need to counsel them based on their lifetime risk, testing their parents, testing their siblings, their risk for future pregnancies. Then you have your unilaterals that test positive. They may or may not be mosaic. And then you have unilaterals with a negative result in this leftover, maybe small risk. So you really only have 3 categories. Maybe you could do videos that are like, I don't know.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. Yeah, Mary, and then Helen, aka Adam.
yeah, I think what you have to realize is that in any video like this, you have to make a statement, probably at the beginning and at the end, that this is basic information that does not necessarily apply to the individual situation. And that this is an educational video only, and is to help to explain what your own results, take in, and that's to be given by a health professional. Like, for instance, my family would never fit into any of this because we have bilaterals, we have unilaterals, we have people who have mutations who have never had any clinical aspects. Like, we just don't fit. So there's probably other families out there like that, but you just have to make sure that the video says this is educational only, and you have to rely on your health professional for explanation of your result. Because that's all it is. It's educational only. It's not your specific result that we're explaining in the video. Right?
Okay. Great. Adam, do you have something to add?
Yeah, so maybe bouncing off of a prior point, maybe we can have a patient story for that emotional impact for each type of common prognosis. I was just mentioning, like, maybe there's 3 common prognosis that'll be relevant, and that could explain the genetic maybe misunderstandings or the common questions at play but through the lens of a patient or a parent that went through that. So maybe that's an idea to consider.
That's a great place to start, and somewhere where we can start without having to do much more other than just do a video of a story. If there are people here willing to make that personal video, Celine, I'm looking at you. And then we can look at other resources and see how to build further beyond the patient story. But that's like a really easy first step we can do, if we're willing.
I think this would be really helpful even for us to share with our family members.
Yeah.
My parents still don't get it.
Yeah.
My parents, my in-laws, especially because they're like,
should we do like a crab event for parents and
Yeah.
Family members?
they don't understand.
Yeah.
They don't get it. They don't know what happened. Like they don't think we did anything wrong. They just don't know. They don't understand.
Yeah. When we did our focus groups in Kenya, I remember the misunderstanding was so much further, like genetic versus infectious, right? So sometimes there was so much misunderstanding. They thought cancer was something you could catch. So
there are still stupid people like that.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, but
Yeah.
there are people like that in our community, even who are my age.
Wow.
And they're like, is it because you wear glasses?
Oh,
Is that why? And another one who's like, do you have heavy metals in your body? Like, do you have fillings? What?
There's a lot of misinformation.
I have two other kids. Like, I did everything the same way. Like, I took my vitamins.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like, it's just something that happened. And I just feel like a video would be so good. Sorry. A video would be really good because like this whole thing really sucks.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, like it's horrible, and I have no words to explain what happened and how it happened. And that's why I wrote that storybook, because like I don't know how to talk about this, and I don't want to make my son feel like something's wrong with him. Like what happened to him, I don't know. Like this is a very child-friendly story of what happened, but something like this would be really good. And I think this needs to be like really shared on social media.
Right.
So people understand.
Right. Right. Okay.
But yeah, there's a lot of ignorance basically. And ignorance isn't always bliss.
Yeah.
So,
Unfortunate. Any comments from the group in Vancouver? Oh, I see Mary. Maybe Mary first and then Vancouver.
I'm just thinking maybe we should get a feel for who out of this group here now would be willing to probably work on this project. I will say I would be willing to, and I don't know if other people want to kind of join in and say yes or no at this point.
Mary, yes. Helen, yes.
I'd be more than happy to. I sort of started some of the work already, so at least we've got a start.
Okay. Anybody?
probably. I don't know. I don't know. I have to see, but yeah, probably. Yes.
You can pick the capacity in which you can, I think we got
Probably.
Mary, Helen, Jamie, Celine, like, yeah, so Celine's a maybe. But I mean,
It would be
at the
next
very
year.
least, your contribution is next year, or, being called to another meeting where you review the video that will be created. But if you want to help develop the video, we could really, do more work.
When
before
would the
then.
meetings be? Like, would they be
We could decide.
during the day? Because I can only be available like in the evenings.
We can decide. We can probably do a lot of it without meetings as well, like finding the right resources, putting them in
If
a
that's
space
the
we
case,
can.
I can help.
Great.
I just can't commit to like lunchtime
I know.
meetings. Yeah.
We can decide. Anyone else, someone in Vancouver who wants to continue along with this project?
At the risk of overrepresenting genetic counselors, I can mobilize my contacts on the West Coast.
I'm counting you as double expertise as Mary, so I think we're lucky there. Good.
And maybe Helen, there's something like I don't know, a little call out to the members just to say, would you like to tell your story? We're interested in making videos. You might get some adolescents.
That's true. That's a great point. Okay, and then the last thing I have for you, because I see people starting to trickle back in, we're in the main room. Who wants to give our little spiel about, like, a report back to the rest of the group? Mitch?
Sure.
Okay. We'll put Mitch on, I can support if that's the case, but I think Sam, you're bringing everybody back in now? Yeah, okay, so thank you, everyone. I'll send out like notes following up what we just discussed, and I got some notes sort of in written form, so I'll email it and share the video as well after. We'll
Yeah,
follow
like
the
if
next
the
steps.
timing of like of the meetings are convenient, I am happy to help.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Good.
And
Thanks.
even if it's like you said, like through email,
Yeah.
just to kind of like debrief and stuff and like add more.
And
Yeah.
input. Yeah, sounds good.
Okay.
Thank you. All right, thanks, everyone. We'll just wait for everybody to come back in.